Thank you so much for joining me on my YouTube channel to hear the first chapter of the next Purls and Prayers novel. I hope that you will enjoy it, and I also hope that you will leave a comment in the comment section telling me what you think, because that will help me with some decisions that I need to make. And it will also get you another entry in this month's giveaway, which is a signed copy of The Unlikely Yarn of the Dragon Lady and a signed copy of The Tangled Tale of the Wool Gathering Cast-Offs. So let's begin. The title so far is The Unraveled Secret of the Disappointed Daughter, Chapter 1. Amy Taylor couldn't help grinning at her daughter. Heaven Lee, 6 months old, was supposed to be settling down for her morning nap, but she was waving her chubby arms and cooing at her mother instead. Amy gazed at her, momentarily lost in the deep blue of Heaven's eyes. "Daddy will be here soon, but that doesn't mean you don't have to take a nap, young lady," Amy finally said, glancing at the clock on the nightstand. "He should have been here already," she said under her breath. Where was Bry? Her boyfriend should have arrived 7 minutes ago, and now she was going to be late for work. Not late by her boss's standards, which allowed her to slide into work at 9:30 on the dot if she chose. No, she was late according to the voice in her head that reminded her that arriving at anything on time was actually late. It was the voice of her mother, a hard-driving corporate executive who insisted one must arrive 15 minutes before the appointed time in order not only to be on time, but to get a jump on the competition. Amy hadn't particularly noticed much competition for her retail mall job at Hot Topic. Her co-workers had been more than happy to be spared the added responsibility of shift manager. Or maybe, Amy reflected, they realized that since she had a baby to support now, she needed the raise in pay that came with the responsibility. They were nice that way. With one last glance at her daughter, now happily grabbing at her toes, Amy went back to the living room of her tiny apartment. She plumped the bright pillows on her garage sale couch, once again congratulating herself on getting such a great deal on the only slightly used piece of furniture. She retrieved a couple of rubber blocks from under the coffee table, another garage sale find, and returned them to the basket of Heaven's toys nearby. Satisfied that the room was in order, she consulted her phone for probably the 5th time in as many minutes. Where was Bry? He knew she needed him here by 9 so she could be at the mall by 1/4 after. She was about to text her boyfriend yet again when he breezed through the door of her apartment, backpack slung over his shoulder and a happy grin on his face. She glared at him. "I'm going to be late. We'll talk about this later. The baby's not asleep yet, but it's nap time." Yeah, I'll let her sleep. It's all good, Amy. You just go on to work." He leaned in for a goodbye hug. Amy returned the hug, her nose alert for the telltale reek of weed on his clothes. But no, he smelled of shaving cream. She let out a small sigh of relief as she realized he was late because he'd been shaving his head on either side of his bright green spiked mohawk. Apparently, Bry had heard the sniff and sigh. He put his hands on her shoulders and beamed at her. "I'm not high, Amy. I'm happy. Happier than I've ever been in my life." "That's great, but it would be great if you could get here by 9. Some of us have to be at work on time." She threw this last over her shoulder on her way out the door. As she hurried down the stairs to the parking lot, she wondered what she would do if he ever arrived high to care for their baby, Heaven Lee. She'd have to call in, say she'd be late, and try to find alternative childcare. She bit her lip. She couldn't afford a daycare center. The only way she could make it was for Bry to care for Heaven at her apartment while he worked remotely for a tech company, his dream job. He was good at both jobs. Heaven was thriving. But she really did need a plan B, Amy thought to herself. Bry had sworn off drugs, but just in case... She glanced over at her knitting bag, nestled cozily on the passenger seat. She always put it in the car on Tuesday nights, so she wouldn't forget it in the rush to get to work. Knitting with the members of the Heavenly Hugs Prayer Shawl Ministry during her lunch break on Wednesdays was food for her soul. The Heavenly Hugs weren't just nice ladies who knitted in front of Macy's on Wednesdays. They were church ladies who prayed. With a decisive nod, she resolved to ask the group to put Plan B for Heavenly on their prayer list. At exactly 11:30, Amy left the store in the capable hands, she hoped, of a pair of Hot Topic employees. One of them was new, so she was a bit nervous about it. It was only a half hour, she told herself. The store would be fine for 30 minutes, surely. Her heart lifted at the sight of the members of the Heavenly Hugs Prayer Shawl Ministry. The four women occupied the seating area in front of Macy's, made cozy and inviting with a leather couch, several armchairs, a coffee table, and an oriental rug. The couch was flanked by tall, fake palm trees, sparkling with white twinkle lights. Rose, white-haired and comfortably plump, sat at one end of the couch. Fran occupied the other end, her brown hair falling around her face as she focused on her knitting. Jane, who understood about Bri better than any of them, gave her a quick, warm smile. And Mrs. Benson, in her summer suit and pantyhose, in August, nodded in regal acknowledgement. Bright yarn filled their hands, their laps, and peeked over the edges of the totes at their feet. "We were hoping you'd be able to make it today," Rose said, her blue eyes bright with welcome. "Come sit by me." "How's the sweater coming along?" Jane asked, once Amy was seated. She peered into Amy's knitting bag. Amy pulled out her work in progress, a tiny purple sweater for her baby girl. "I finished the back. I'm starting one of the front pieces today. I hope I can get it done before fall. The back took forever, and I've got to make 2 sleeves." Mrs. Benson cleared her throat. "Yes, Mrs. Benson? It will go faster if you make both sleeves at the same time." "You can do that?" Fran, a relatively new knitter, said, eyes wide. "I don't see how." "Yes, indeed," Mrs. Benson said. "You cast on one sleeve with one ball of yarn, then cast on the other one with another ball of yarn, or you could use each end from the same ball of yarn." Amy wrinkled her forehead as she tried to picture this. Suddenly it became clear, and she could see exactly what her expert knitter meant. There they were, 2 sleeves hanging from one needle, and she could see how she could knit across one sleeve, drop the yarn from the first ball, and then pick up the yarn from the second ball for the second sleeve. "I get it now. That's really great. Thank you." "Happy to help," Mrs. Benson smiled. "It's going to look so cute on her." Mrs. Benson sure had changed, Amy reflected as she set to work on the right front of Heaven's cardigan. When Amy first met her, Margaret Benson had been really uptight. Amy suspected that she had been a surprise to the lady in the power suit and sensible heels, what with her spiky purple hair and eyebrow ring, not to mention her black nail polish and row of sparkly studs in each ear. Mrs. Benson hadn't thought out enough to allow Amy to call her by her first name yet, but the tone of her voice indicated a distinct warming trend. When she got to the end of the row, Amy cleared her throat. "Would you put something on the prayer list for me?" "Of course." Rose reached into her knitting bag for the Heavenly Hugs Prayer Shawl Ministry prayer journal. "It's about child care for the baby." Eyebrows went up around the circle. "I thought Bryson was doing a great job," Fran said. "He's not using again, is he?" Jane said with a worried frown. No, nothing like that. It's just that he's my only plan for child care. If he was sick or fell off the wagon," this from Mrs. Benson, never one to beat around the bush. "Yes, I mean, he's doing great about staying clean, but—" "There's always a chance he'll slip." Jane said this quietly, sadly. Amy sighed and nodded. "So I really should have a plan B. I have to work to support her, but I don't make enough to put her in daycare. I don't know what I would do if I couldn't take care of her." "It's always good to have a plan B," Rose said, "but I'm just going to write Care for Heavenly, so you'll be open to God's plan for taking care of her. And remember, we're all praying for Bryson, and for you too. Amy settled back on the couch, feeling much more relaxed than she had all morning. The heavenly hugs ladies had that effect on her. In the circle of their knitting and their praying, she felt loved, safe, hopeful. She gazed at each in turn, taking in their projects and their progress. In one of the armchairs, Mrs. Benson was knitting with deep blue, chunky yarn. The shawl that flowed from her needles was worked entirely in garter stitch, just about the easiest pattern out there. Amy thought back to the first shawl she'd seen Mrs. Benson working on, a lacy, ivory-colored masterpiece. Mrs. Benson made much simpler shawls these days. In the other armchair, Jane stitched away at a shawl worked in a restful shade of pale green, her eyes fixed on a pile of the pile of Starbucks napkins in the center of the coffee table. The napkins were scribbled with prayer requests, the hopes, dreams, and needs of the people who worked and shopped at Crossroads Mall. Amy herself was nestled between Rose on her right and Fran on her left. Fran's forehead wrinkled in concentration over a new project. Only a few stitches of pale gray yarn hung from her needles. Fran caught her gaze and said, "Howie wants a prayer shawl to help him pray, he says. I didn't want to make it in such a drab color, but he says his life is bright enough with me in it." She blushed, her cheeks pink and her eyes glowing. "That man certainly has come a long way when it comes to Blarney," Rose chuckled. "Remember when he first tried to talk to you?" "We all remember," Margaret rolled her eyes. "He made that awful pun about a name for our group. Naughty, get it, naughty knitters, indeed. We weren't too sure about him." "Especially you," Rose grinned. "But he was just out of practice," Fran said with a happy sigh. Amy also sighed. Fran and Howie made it look so easy, this marriage thing. After long marriages and then widowhood, they had found one another at the mall of all places. Their wedding a month ago had been a joyous celebration of second chances. Even little Heavenly had joined in the cheers that rose at the kiss at the end of the ceremony, waving her arms and crowing with delight. Bry had looked at Amy over Heaven's head, hope in his eyes. "Marry me, Amy. Please, please, marry me." Amy shook her head now, as she had shaken it then. Fran and Howie might rush into marriage on a few months' acquaintance, but she had to be sure. Sure that Bry was done with drugs, sure that he would stick it out no matter what. A child of divorce herself, Amy did not want that for either herself or her daughter. She needed more time, and she needed Bry to come take care of Heaven on time, too, Amy thought, pressing her lips together. Moments later, a young woman emerged from Macy's and hurried over to the seating area, a messenger bag bumping on her hip. "Kanisha, so good to see you," Rose greeted her warmly. "It's been a while," Amy said as her friend settled into the last available armchair. "I know." Kanisha pulled her latest work in progress out of her bag. "Changing majors junior year is not for the faint of heart. Some of the classes I took for fashion marketing will apply to fashion design, but I have a lot of catching up to do. I've been in school all summer." "We know you can do it," Rose said. "All the hard work aside, are you enjoying it?" Jane asked. Kanisha's deep brown eyes shone. "Oh, yes. My class on garment construction, the colors, the fabrics, colors, textures, drape, and how to put it all together to make something beautiful. I love it." Amy's phone buzzed with a text notification. Her stomach clenched as she reached for her phone. That new employee. A glance at the screen told her it wasn't from the store. Oh no, nothing as simple as that. She almost wished there was a problem at Hot Topic. She groaned as she read the message. Kanisha looked up sharply from her knitting. "What's wrong? Is the baby okay?" "It's not Bry," Amy said, "or the store. It's much, much worse." And there you have it, the first chapter of The Unraveled Secret of the Disappointed Daughter. Please take a moment to put a comment below. to tell me what you think. Be honest, but also please be kind. Thank you. Bye bye.